Hey, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel. If you've watched my videos for any length of time, you know that I'm pretty much a free speech kind of a guy. Heck, that was one of the main reasons why I went to the Demand Free Speech rally in San Francisco last year in May. That, and to meet some really great people like Michaela Bearpaw, Bernadine Barber, and Ashley St. Clair, whom you all should definitely be following on their respective platforms. And because we like free speech here on the Stone, we have also talked previously about the censorship that has come down to us from our digital overlords. And today, the time has come to talk again about this censorship, because on February 14th, our own platform here on YouTube deplatformed Nick Fuentes and his America First channel. Why? Quote, due to multiple or severe violations of YouTube's policy prohibiting hate speech. We've talked about Fuentes a few times on the Stone as well, particularly in his role as the leader of the Groypers, the band of younger, more hardline, and, dare I say it, more honest conservatives, who took mainstream conservatives like Turning Point USA's Charlie Kirk and the wunderkind himself Ben Shapiro to task for the direction of modern US conservatism, particularly in regards to immigration and its abandonment of social conservatism. Fuentes was a lightning rod for criticism and was accused of being everything from a member of the alt-right to a white supremacist to an out-and-out neo-Nazi, and part of the reason for his fall was because everyone, and I mean everyone, banded together to get him deplatformed. According to National File, quote, leftists, mainstream conservatives, and racial nationalists all despise him, and many have tried to get him removed from the site in the past, as they seemingly all consider him a threat, unquote. Fuentes was so popular, and I mean that in the most sarcastic way possible, that last December, Leslie Stahl, the host of 60 Minutes, asked Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube, why the platform hadn't already gotten rid of Fuentes and other conservative commentators like him for hate speech. When the news broke, conservative commentators offered pretty much the same thoughts that they always offer in a situation like this. Ben Shapiro on Twitter said, quote, Nick Fuentes is an absolute disgusting S-show, but if he was banned for his idiotic garbage viewpoints rather than for violent threats, YouTube shouldn't be deplatforming him. Lauren Chen took to Twitter saying that even though you might disagree 100% with everything that Nick Fuentes says, YouTube still shouldn't have muzzled him. Not to be disrespectful or anything, but this is the same refrain that we have heard now from mainstream conservatives for years, every time someone gets muzzled or deplatformed from any one of their social media accounts. Unless you're someone like Hunter Avalon, in which case, what you talking about, fool? There ain't no muzzling of conservative voices on social media. At the same time, some people have been racking their brains trying to think of some solution that would stop the censorship from happening altogether. For example, some people have suggested that instead of treating social media companies like third-party neutral platforms, as they claim to be, Congress instead should start treating them like biased publishers. Others have called for an Internet Bill of Rights that would protect customers and users from the changing proclivities of our social media masters. All of those are great ideas. Unfortunately, none of them are going to make a tinker's damn worth of difference. Why's that? Because of the very nature of social media itself. To understand what I mean by that, it's necessary that we go back to fundamentals and ask ourselves, what even is social media? Now you might think that's a deceptively easy question. It's the means by which we can communicate instantaneously with anybody at any point of the globe. That's true, but it's a deceptive answer because it leads us to the second question. What is communication? And this is where we get into the deep waters, because communication, when all is said and done, is power. I've talked before about how language is the house of being, as the philosopher Martin Heidegger put it, meaning that the essences of things, what makes things what they are, resides in the words that describe them. So for example, part of the essence of a tree is in the word tree itself. Part of an elephant is in the word elephant. Part of what makes the virtues of justice and courage what they are resides in the words justice and courage themselves. This is why I just have to say a word like snow, And even in the middle of the hottest August that you could imagine, your mind is going to be filled with pictures of winter wonderlands. What this means is that language has the power to actually extend us out into the world. As we increase our vocabulary, we increase our capacity not only to understand the world around us, but actually to touch the world around us. Naturally, the more nouns that you know, the more essences that you will have stored up here in your mind palace. But also the more adjectives that you know, the more vividly you're going to be able to describe those essences. Compare, for example, just saying snow to then saying biting cold snow. Those two extra words make a world of difference. And the more verbs you know, the more you're going to be able to make your communications come alive. The historian John Lucas, in one of his essays, actually argued that verbs were the sign of good writing, using a line from James Joyce's novel Ulysses to make his point. Evening invaded the streets. And with all of these elements in place, you are in a position to use them as building blocks to start improving your own communication. You can start giving your arguments the structure of reason, as Abraham Lincoln was famous for doing. Fast fact about Lincoln, the historian Alan Gulzo has said that if you just listened to Lincoln and his arch nemesis Stephen Douglas for 5 minutes, more than likely you would side with Douglas. His passion and his power of description would sweep you up to his side of the aisle. But if you kept listening to them, if you listened for another 25 minutes, you would inevitably be taken to Lincoln's side of the argument, because the power of his logic and of his reasoning would suck you in like a black hole. Just as important as the structure of reason, you can start creating metaphors, not only just to enrich your communication, but so that you can make connections between ideas so that people can see things in a totally new light and think about them in a different way. The undisputed master of this was Ray Bradbury. In his novel Fahrenheit 451, for instance, he at one point writes, quote, "With the brass nozzle in his fists, with this great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world, the blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor, playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of history." This combination of reason and metaphor engages the head and the heart, and thus makes our communications that much more powerful. And that's important because the entire point of communication is the conveying of ideas, which honestly just makes sense given what we've said about language being the house of being. From ordering in the drive-thru at McDonald's, to talking about the weather with the cute girl that you met at Starbucks, to debating politics, to telling your date why you didn't particularly enjoy the movie you just saw, to arguing about philosophy. The only reason why we communicate with each other is to convey ideas to one another. And because ideas are incarnated in words, and as we've already said, words are the house of being, containing within themselves the essences of real things, this is the reason why communication is so powerful. When we use language correctly to convey the truth, we are actually dealing in being itself. We're dealing with reality. And when we pervert language by lying, etc., we are actually twisting reality for our own ends and purposes. Either way, truth or lies, we are dealing with a tremendous store of power. Oh, and real quick before we go on, if you're enjoying the video, take a sec to subscribe to the channel and to ring the bell for notifications, so that you will always know when I post new videos about the culture, politics, and religion from a unique POV. This is why, as long as social media companies exist, censorship is going to be the logical end. If you're still not convinced, let me put it like this. Imagine the power of communication being like a great river. Social media companies, by their very nature, control the flow of this river, and they can change its course, its direction, its depth with a wave of their hand. Or in this case, with a slight alteration of an algorithm that we're never actually permitted to see, FYI. What this means is that social media represents one of the greatest concentrations of power in recorded history. And if Lord Acton's motto, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, still holds firm today, as it did in the 19th century, and hint hint wink wink, it does, then it's absolutely no surprise that these social media companies have fallen prey to temptation and have decided to control the flow of that river of communication in order to create the world that they want to see. And that's not hyperbole, friends. Last year, when the Google whistleblower blew his whistle for Project Veritas, he told James O'Keefe, quote, "They, Google, is going to redefine a reality based on what they think is fair and based on what they want and what is part of their agenda," unquote. And social media companies, Google in this case, is going to do that through tools like machine learning fairness, which gives politically charged search results. For example, go to Google and in the search engine type out "women can," and you'll be given suggestions like "do anything," "do it," "vote." Type into the Google search engine "men can," and you will be given results like "cook," "can get pregnant," "can get periods." Or look at what our own YouTube did at the end of 2018, when April Glasner complained on Slate that there were too many pro-life videos popping up when she typed in "abortion" into YouTube's search engine. YouTube obliged by changing its ranking system so that those pro-life videos no longer appeared in searches. And because a supermajority of people use social media. Just here in America, for example, Pew Research has said that 90% of people between the ages of 18 and 29, 82% of people between the ages of 30 and 49, 69% of people between the ages of 50 and 64, and even 40% of people 65 or older use social media. The version of reality that social media companies create is also going to become reality for that supermajority of people. But what's allowing social media companies to even do this in the first place? A big component of that answer is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, which was originally passed to keep the then nascent internet porn-free and family-friendly. In the early days of the internet, most online firms were dial-up bulletin boards like Prodigy. And if they tried it to keep their platforms wholesome and family-friendly, then they could very possibly run afoul of what was called publisher and distributor tort liability law. To make a very long story short, if Prodigy promised to create a wholesome, family-friendly environment, like Congress wanted, by editing obscene and profane comments on the bulletin board, then it became liable for everything that was said on its platform, thus opening itself up to lawsuits galore. Section 230 was the answer to this conundrum, which gave social media companies and the internet itself the same immunities that phone companies and the like enjoy. For example, if a genuine dyed-in-the-wool Klansman went on to Prodigy and argued why blacks needed to be destroyed or whatever, Prodigy could not be held liable for what that knucklehead had written on its platform. But the problem was, the gift of Section 230 was given to the internet without the internet having to make any promises in return. So for example, without the internet having to promise that they were not going at any point in the future to engage in viewpoint discrimination. And nothing was asked of the internet in 1996 because the internet was in absolutely no position to actually give anything to anybody. Today, Section 230 still gives the internet, including social media companies, all the immunities in the world, but it has absolutely no teeth to punish them when they engage in viewpoint discrimination, censorship, muzzling, etc., etc. Of course, all this censorship could be solved if everyone collectively just deleted all of their social media accounts. You can't control a river that's dried up, after all. Problem is, that's not going to happen either. Remember those stats I recited just a moment ago from Pew Research about the number of people who use social media? Well, there's a reason for that. And it's a bigger reason than just keeping in touch with your college roommate or with the news. Social media preys upon two primal needs that we all have as human beings. The need to belong to a group or groups, and the need for social recognition. And social media companies know damn well that they are tapping into those primal human needs. Former Facebook president Sean Parker admitted as such when he said that Facebook was all about, quote, "How do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? A little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post. And that's going to get you to contribute more. It's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. In light of all this, an Internet Bill of Rights isn't going to make a tinker's damn worth of difference to censorship. The only thing that might possibly change it is the revocation of Section 230, but even that's not a guarantee. Who knows what sort of loopholes social media companies and their army of lawyers and lobbyists would be able to find or would be able to create. And again, revoking Section 230 isn't going to change the nature of social media companies or the essence of communication, which again is the whole reason why censorship comes about in the first place. But I do know this. Simply saying that social media companies shouldn't censor people, saying that the First Amendment should be honored, whether it's by government entities, the public square, or private entities, isn't going to actually stop the censorship. But as always, what say you? If the very nature of social media makes censorship inevitable, then what steps can be taken, if any, to minimize that inevitable outcome? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and opinions in the comment box below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. Before you go, if you could give the video a like and share it with your friends, I would be very much obliged. It really helps me out. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your day, and thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you all. So until next week, gang, take care, and dare to read, think, speak, and write on and off social media. Ciao.